Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to more thought about David. But actually, I'm going to focus on Jonathan today. At the first 7 verses of chapter 19 in 1 Samuel. We know that Saul was very jealous of David, and he just kept doing unpleasant things to him, trying to make his life more difficult, trying to get him killed. And then he actually went further than that and spoke to his son and all his servants, verse 1, that they should kill David. That must be very difficult to live with. Now, we have been talking a few days ago about submission, and that submission is a good thing. But it's not a good thing when the thing that you're being asked to do is evil in the sight of God. That's when you respectfully decline to submit. And Jonathan became what Jesus called a peacemaker. He became, when Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," that's in Matthew chapter 5, the first 12 verses. But it's actually, let me just quote it for you. Verse 9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Why? Because that's what God is all about. God is all about bringing peace between two enemy camps. And the enemy camps he made peace between was himself and us. And he sent Jesus to be the Prince of Peace, making peace between two parties that could not be reconciled without the problem being dealt with. And the problem for us, of course, was sin. Now, in this situation with Saul and David and Jonathan, it must have added fuel, actually, to the fire, the fact that Jonathan and Saul and David got on so well together. So the first thing Jonathan did was to tell David, as if David didn't know. Maybe David innocently didn't realize that when he was asked to get 100 Philistine foreskins as a bridal price for Saul's daughter, maybe he didn't realize at the time that Saul wanted to kill him. Maybe he didn't realize. So here we are. I'm sorry, a thought has come across my head because I was suddenly paralleling this in David's later life when he sent Uriah the Hittite husband to Bathsheba into the front of the battle lines so that he would be killed and got out of the way. And here was Saul, who had done exactly a similar thing to him, tried to get him out of the way by sending him into a battle. It seems such an interesting parallel, but we'll look at that later on. But David, anyways, Jonathan warns David, "Saul, my father, seeks to kill you." And he says to him, "Go and hide, and I'll talk to my father about you." Because if everyone in the household of Saul had been told to kill David, then without Saul taking back that word of command, David would have been killed. And it says in verse 4, "Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, 'Let not the king sin against his servant David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his deeds have been of good service to you. For he took his life in his hand, and he slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great victory for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood by killing David without a cause?' And Saul hearkened to the voice of Jonathan. Saul swore, 'As the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death.' And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan showed him all these things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as before. Jonathan is a wonderful example here of a peacemaker. He interceded, he spoke to the king for David, on David's behalf. He, the heir to the throne, pleaded with Saul for his friend. And being a peacemaker is not easy. It put Jonathan at risk. In those days, Jonathan could as easily have been exiled or executed as a result for having sided with a man that Saul saw as an enemy. It was a risky thing to do, but being a peacemaker brings with it very, very great blessings. And this is something we should emulate. We should all be peacemakers whenever there's trouble, perhaps in our family or in our place of work, and we can see what's happening, and we can see an unfairness, perhaps as Jonathan saw here, the unfairness of Saul towards David, and he speaks of it. He says, David hasn't done anything. He hasn't been trying to undermine your kingship. He hasn't stood against you. He hasn't tried to get the people to love him more than they love you. He has served you faithfully. And we can make an argument, perhaps. We can make a defense or plead a cause with gentle words to try to right and try to bring about reconciliation in a situation. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Peacemaking is most precious of things. And when we're praying for nations around the world, there are people who are peacemakers. There are envoys who go from nation to nation trying to bring about a fair peace, a just peace between warring factions, trying to find a way that warring factions can live peaceably side by side and war can end. Sometimes it's like this. It's a life and death situation, and it's something that is very close to God's heart, that there should be peace, and we should do everything we can to live peaceably with one another. There's another verse somewhere, I can't remember where it is, that says, as far as it is in your hand to live at peace with those around you. Look it up, you'll find it. I'm paraphrasing it, but it's a New Testament verse to think about. Being peaceful is very important. Very important. God has sent us into the world to be peacemakers, to encourage people to accept the peace that God is offering them in and through the Lord Jesus Christ, to reconcile people to him through Jesus, who's done all the work for us, so that we don't have to stay estranged from God, but we can be at peace with him. That's my thought for the day. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.